Have you had a close encounter of the third kind? If you have, I would certainly like to talk to you. Write to me. My contact form is found at yahad.me, yahad.me. Let's talk.
To experience, Jackson Snyder presents. We will examine the life of our master Yeshua by discovering his ancestors, family, and friends, by reviewing rare ancient manuscripts, and speaking to those who know him best. From the Vero Essene Yahad, now experience, Jackson Snyder presents.
This recording has been modified to fit the time period.
So I was looking at the feed on the think tank and, because of the message that you sent. And when I was scrolling down past that picture of that creepy looking creature thing, my whole screen started shimmying. And then when I scrolled down to like the next post, it stopped. And then I could scroll up and it started like shaking.
What do you think that is?
Well, that was a pretty creepy looking picture.
Yes, it is. Just so happens that I believe that I met one of these fellows a couple of times. Well, I'm sure of it. Maybe you won't be sure, but, people that have had these kind of encounters are stigmatized.
They could have invaded your space.
Yes, most people won't come clean about it or tell about it because they think other people will think they're nuts. However, today there are just so many, millions of people that have claimed to have had encounters with beings that don't seem to be of this world. And I thought I'd talk about that tonight. I don't have a camera on here, so you wouldn't want to see me anyway tonight. But
are you going to explain what that creature is? Because I've never heard of that particular thing. I've never ever heard of that. Do you know what it is?
No, I don't know what it is. But as I said, I had some very close encounters with a guy like this. And I'll tell you the story if you're ready for me to tell it. It shouldn't take very long.
I'm ready. I want to hear it.
Well, I've heard it, but I want to hear it.
Yes. Note, if you're looking at that picture, if you got access to it, note the costume. Anyway, I had a friend when I was 15. This was in about 1968, I reckon. And that friend lived down on a side street at the end of the street that stopped. And after that street stopped, there was a location called Seven Quarries. I still have dreams about Seven Quarries, though I don't think I was ever down there. My dreams are that I go down into this place and discover all kinds of strange realities. But anyway, it's still in my dreams. And he was telling a story to some of us chaps that there was a rumor going around in the neighborhood that there was some little creature chasing young children, and that the little creature became known as Scab Man. Why, I don't know, except that one child was seen running away from this thing, and that's what the child was yelling. It's Scab Man. It's Scab Man. And so, of course, we were scientific children, and we doubted this. We doubted that it really happened. If you were going to see aliens, you would see these grays. Nothing like this. However, since then, I've talked to several people who've encountered these kinds of beings. And we decided we were going to save the children. So we were camping out behind that house that was on Seven Quarries. And down there you could see vegetation and a lot of trees, and you could almost smell the water down there, and bushes plenty, and even fruit trees. And we got a gang up, probably about seven kids. Yeah, I think so. All about 17, 16, 15, some from the neighborhood. And we decided to sleep under the stars that night on the edge of 7 quarries to see if we could encounter this Scab man, although none of us believed that we actually would, or even believed that the story about the child was true. We just took it as a challenge, to do something different for a change. And so we had a little meal out there, and one of the kids threw a pillow, and the pillow exploded, and there were feathers every place. And this was the kid whose backyard we were in, and his mother was quite a disciplinarian. And so she wasn't home at that time. So he went into the house and drug out a vacuum cleaner with all kinds of extension cords to get it out there. This is helping me to remember this. And so I guess that probably 3 long extension cords got it out to the site, and he began to sweep the grass with a vacuum cleaner. And it began to rain a little bit, just drizzled. Everybody took a turn to try, and then the vacuum cleaner shorted out from the drizzle, from the wetness of the grass, and the 120 volts or whatever it was started going through the body of the vacuum cleaner. So when you touched it, you got one heck of a shock. And after that was over and everybody had a big laugh about it, we decided to bed down. And so we all had sleeping bags out there. Let me see if I can get this right. My best friend was sleeping close to me. We'd had a close encounter one time before together, and maybe they were coming back for us tonight, but I was asleep. And then the other fellow said, "It's Scab Man. It's Scab Man." And I pulled my head out of my sleeping bag and looked, and standing right before us was this creature. I mean, 3 or 4 feet away, just as plain as day, except it was dark, and the creature's features couldn't really be discerned. It looked like that outfit that thing has on, and even more like a little black sheet. It was almost like a shadow that had substance. This was about less than 3 feet tall, less than a yardstick, I should say. And as I mentioned, no features to be seen really, except the blackness. And it moved, much like a human being. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. But it moved around and it came a little closer. Then it stepped back as I came out of my sleeping bag. It stepped back a few times. Then I decided to get up and get at it. Well, some of these kids that were there woke up and they were scared. One of them was crying. And so I got up out of my sleeping bag and I decided I'm going to catch this thing. And it was backing up and I got out and I started at it. I was just almost within a reach of this. And that thing ran behind a little apple tree, maybe 10 feet away. And my friend then got up and we said, "We got you now, we got you now." And it was hiding behind the little apple tree and it kept poking its head out from behind that tree. And what we were doing is we picked up apples and began to throw them at this thing, try to keep it in the same place. While probably 6 or 8 feet away from that to our side was some kind of a bush, a very thick, thicket-like bush. It was probably 5 by 5. And so we came very close to this thing behind the tree, and all of a sudden, that thing popped out, ran into this bush, how, I don't know, and disappeared. That's just part of the story. So some kids, they went home, and I think it was just my friend and I that decided to stay out there, because I guess we were more adventuresome, as the other kids were really upset by this whole situation and went. And we thought, oh, this thing's never going to come back. We were both convinced in our minds that it was real. To this day, I'm sure it's real. So we went back to sleep. And I wasn't quite asleep yet. And I heard, maybe you had this experience too, with your head in a sleeping bag or under covers, the movement and vibration and the sound of footsteps coming up to you. I had secured a pipe in my sleeping bag because I was scared too. I didn't know what it was. And so I began to peek out of that sleeping bag. And there was this thing standing right over my head with some kind of a rod in its hand. and a light bulb, a round light on the end of that rod. And there it was, directing this, well, I'll call it a flashlight, to my face. Having left the sleeping bag open, I lost my grip a little bit, and I pulled that pipe and I swung it around there at this thing, and it hit. I hit the thing solidly. It stopped the pipe. But then, without further ado, that little creature hobbled. It was solid. That creature hobbled away, and we watched him hobble away and went back into this bush again. And as we inspected, it disappeared. That was my experience. Unfortunately, the fellow that I was with at that time just died. I had written to him recently and asked him to recount the experience for himself, and we could compare our experiences and see what we think really happened. Since then, I've talked to several other people who have had the opportunity to witness this same kind of creature. One of them is Allison Gary. She was almost, you'd say, haunted by this creature, or several of them, that would come out. She'd be on the porch. They'd come out of the trees, come before her and just stare at her. And then after a while, she said she was terrified. After a while, they would go back in the tree. Now, she didn't like to talk about it, but I'd like to get her on again to tell more about it, because she was plagued by these things for years. Now, that's the second experience I've had. I'll keep the first one until I can hear some comments from you. It was real. Go ahead.
I have a couple questions. How old did you say you were again?
15.
So you were a believer or no at the time?
Yeah, I was a believer, but I didn't believe. I didn't think the thing was real. My friend that stayed there was a PK, a preacher's kid, but I don't think he was ever a believer.
That's interesting.
This actually came after me.
It's interesting that it had that light thing. I wonder. Okay, so now if I'm thinking about this logically when you were telling your story.
Okay, good.
Okay, since you were obviously awake, you weren't dreaming, since you happened, especially since it happened a couple of times, there was something really there because you hit it with a pipe. So it was either a human being playing a joke, which obviously it wasn't, because you have to be a pretty small dwarf, but I couldn't imagine him taking a pipe hit. So it must have been some kind of supernatural thing. So are we thinking Nephilim, demonic thing, or I mean, I personally don't believe in like ETs as in from another planet. I think they're some kind of spiritual entity type of a thing. But obviously it's not something from Elohim. It would be nefarious, I would think, right? That's kind of what, or at least that's what I'm thinking.
Well, either it wanted to make friends, or it was wanting to inspect you or wanted to harm you. I don't know. What there was that thing in the guy's hand. And as I mentioned with Allison, they came to terrorize her out in her yard and in the house and every place else. But
did you feel threatened? Like, do you remember feeling threatened, or were you just kind of reacting out of defense of the people with you and stuff like that?
Adrenaline. The second time, especially, well, the first time too, but the second one it came up, adrenaline. I wouldn't normally, maybe at that age, I was pretty assertive, but I wouldn't want to hurt anything. And the adrenaline was such that I was able to swing that heavy pipe out while I was still laying down. And the thing had substance, no doubt about it. But then, years later, in 1989, I went to see the movie Communion, from where I believe that picture that I had on the thread came from.
That's the Whitney Stryber, I think his name is. Yeah,
Whitney Stryber. It was a movie, and Christopher Walken was the man in that movie that was having various experiences with these things. In the movie, or the book by Stryber, it's not a novel. It's the encounters that he himself went through. And the movie was made from the novel. So at that time, when I saw the little dark creatures in that movie, it clicked. The only difference was that the creature I saw had only what I could describe as a black sheet over it. It looked kind of like Cousin It. Cousin It had the hair. Is that on Addams Family? I think so.
It is.
Okay, it had the hair coming down like this. This thing was like a shadow. It was totally black. And even when it pulled the light thing out, it's still like it absorbed that light.
Did you say earlier that it didn't have any facial features?
I couldn't see any. The thing on
Well,
the
Yeah, because
thread
when you
does.
said that, I was wondering if maybe it was a shadow person.
What's that, Vicki?
It's like what you're describing. It's like I mean, how you can't, it's like a dark, it's more like a shape and it has no features.
Yes, with the exception
And,
on that thread of the face. I never saw a face on the thing.
Yeah.
Just what looked like a sheet. But you could tell the body movements of it
Yes.
were pretty human, like that of a child, actually.
Shadow people are that way. They have, I mean, when you look at it, it's has a human form, so to speak. But like it's not like looking at like the shape of a body, but you can look, it's like, the appendages kind of are blurred in all in one, but it has a human form, but there's no features. That's what a shadow person is.
All right, I wrote that down so I could look that up later. The features, I could see no features. All I saw was like a sheet over the thing. And of course, where the head is, the sheet, you could see the boundaries of where the thing ended up. I mean, you could see that it was a little humanoid kind of thing because the sheet was in the shape of a little person. If it was a sheet, it could have been the actual thing. I don't know. But I don't think it really showed fear. Maybe when we got after it and it jumped behind that tree, maybe it was fearful because we were yelling at it and everything. And this lasted, the first encounter there where we went behind the tree, it had to last 2 or 3 minutes.
Did it ever come back in your adult life?
No, not until I saw this show. And if that little guy on the thread had a black sheet on him, he would look just like that. I can't remember seeing the feet, but you could see when it ran or shuffled or walked. You could see the gait of the thing. And when I hit him
Did it
with
walk
the
or
pipe,
float?
it walked.
Walked.
So when I hit it with the pipe, the thing hobbled. I must have got it in the side or in the thigh, something like that, if there was one. It hobbled away back to that a bush and then disappeared again. I had another experience. This one was a little earlier, and I'm a little shy about talking about this. I think maybe you will think I'm nuts, but I'm not. My brother and I recall something happening at about this same time. Our backyard was adjacent to a football field, an open field where sandlot football players would come. We played football out there and so forth. Well, I was having really weird dreams about UFO type things because when I was that age, I think I was 13 at this time. When I was at that age, there was all kinds of magazines coming out about this. And I think Barney and Benny Hill had just happened, that story, some other things. The government, of course, was only willing to say that there were not extraterrestrials or anything like that, or whatever they are. I have no doubt that the government's aware of it. There is a documentary out right now where a man comes forward to show all these government documents that came out of being quarantined or whatever. And
Are you talking about Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer?
I think so. That rings a bell.
Unacknowledged?
Yes, that's it.
That's a wonderful one. And also the cosmic hoax.
Well, Stephen Greer, if you get a chance to watch that, it's on Amazon right now.
I think it's also on Tubi. If you have Tubi, is free for people who don't have Prime. It is. I've probably seen Acknowledged. Oh my goodness, probably 5 times. It is just so compelling.
Jackson, I don't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to ask a question real quick. Is this story you're telling now, did this happen before or after your last one in the timeline?
The little guy happened afterwards.
Afterwards, okay.
Within a year or two. I believe I was 13 when the other one happened, and my brother was 11. My youngest brother might have been in on this too. This story I haven't told yet, but he's not the type that talks about those kind of things. My middle brother, the one that I talked about it a little bit, he won't talk about it anymore at all. I asked him several times, let's compare notes or write it up and tell me what you remember, etc. But he won't do that. Of course, he's a well-known evangelist. So having a story like that, he's always having to hide his identity, kind of, especially because his serving in communist China for so many years. His concern about somebody over there finding out his personal life and then going after his disciples over there. He's very concerned about that even today. And
well, what happened with that, with your brother?
I'm going to tell you.
Good.
My part of it was my bedroom was this little old house was facing at the window. You looked out into this field, big football field. And after several nights of very creepy dreams, the typical experience came upon me that's come upon a lot of other youths. And that is to be awakened by noise and then to look out into the back on that football field. And I saw the typical UFO spacecraft. It looked like a flying saucer. And it had a variety of lights on it. And it had windows on it that you could see people shuffling around. I could see them from there. And before long, these guys, 3 or 4 of them, came up to my window and were looking in the window. And then I just came out right through the wall and followed these guys, or they followed me to this flying saucer. And this is pretty difficult to remember. It's even harder to talk about, but I didn't feel scared or anything. The thing communicated with me, not much, but they would tell me what was going on and what they were going to do. And they ushered me into what could only be called a clinic. And in that clinic were a number of like electronic type machines that I couldn't identify. Remember, this is way before the PC computer. And I remember getting up on a gurney, and I remember these guys looking over me and doing stuff. Now, what did they do? They did something with my nipples. They put something in there. I just made a connection. And the next thing I remember was that I was being ushered back into my bed. It could have been a dream, but it wasn't the environment or the feeling like any other dream. And then the same thing had happened to my brother the same night. When he first talked about it, as I said, since he hasn't. But what happened to me is that I began, and him too, we began to grow vestigial cystic type tumors under the nipples that were so painful that eventually I had to go in surgery and have them taken out. Honest fact. The connection I made was with what was going on with my chest in my recollection of the encounter. And then I'm going to say within a year, these tumors begin to grow, extremely painful. I never knew anything about the surgery, except I went in. When I came out, they were gone. What they actually did is they cut around both nipples and took out whatever was in there. My brother never had that done. I don't know why. And I've never talked to him about that. But this comes right on the heels of this dream or experience or vision or whatever it was. And at that time, it was my thought, because I was a very sincere, charismatic believer at that time, spent lots of evenings at the altar and in prayer. And that was the time when I was being taken around to pray for people that were extremely ill or terminally ill. And as far as I know, we saw some healings at that time. In fact, I'm still friends with the son of the mayor. The mayor's wife had terminal emphysema, and he remembers me coming over and praying. He's probably about 5 years younger. So this was all happening, the supernatural stuff at the same time. But that was the recollection I have, and I would have just thought nothing of it had not the same thing happened to my brother. And I think it's the same thing because when he talked about it years ago, he would talk about it. And then soon after that, when the two of us, again, had gone to church at night for a Sunday evening service, and we had gone up into the balcony where we wasn't supposed to be in the balcony. And up there, in the midst of the preaching of the preacher, the Holy Spirit fell on us both at the same time.
And it is at this critical juncture that we must leave the story for a little bit for these important announcements.
Welcome back to Jackson Snyder Presents. This presentation is already in progress. When the two of us, again, had gone to church at night for a Sunday evening service, and we had gone up into the balcony where we wasn't supposed to be in the balcony. And up there, in the midst of the preaching of the preacher, the Holy Spirit fell on us both at the same time, with one of the evidences, that is the speaking of tongues and certainly zeal. After that, he and I both sought careers in the ministry, and even at that age, we would go out and play concerts, places. We were musicians, both of us, pray for people. I played the piano at that age, for Aglow, at several evangelistic meetings and several Christian stars that came to town. I was a really good piano player. And all this stuff was happening at the same time. So that's about all I can recall of that story. I've always been interested in finding out more. And tell me the name of that movie again. Vicky?
It's called Unacknowledged.
Unacknowledged. I'm going to watch that again.
It's really good. And he also does another one. It's newer than that one. It's called The Cosmic Hoax.
Okay.
And it's really good, but Unacknowledged is I liked it better. It's more thorough, but The Cosmic Hoax is really good. And for those who don't have Prime, it is also on Tubi, Tubi.
That's
and
free,
that's
isn't
a
it?
free. That's a free. I think you might have to watch like a couple ads in it or something if you. But it is free if you don't have Prime. You can see
Another one I watched the other night was not so good. It was Among Us. It turned into an explanation of all kinds of New Age stuff.
I watched that whole thing after you showed that part.
That part was extremely interesting.
That really was.
But
it was very New Agey.
I have no doubt that there's something strange about the hostess on there. She's either a New Age guru or a witch or an alien herself.
I thought she was an alien. I thought she was a hybrid or something, that if that's possible. I thought she was some kind of hybrid. Yeah. It was weird.
Very weird. So that's Among Us. Now we've got Unacknowledged, The Cosmic Hoax, Among Us. The first part of Among Us was real good until they started introducing stuff that was, I would say, almost on the verge of demonic.
You know what's good about Unacknowledged is that it's very academic and scholarly, just kind of matter-of-factly, just witness after witness, and it's just, you're just like, okay, there's definitely something going on here. You know what troubles me about all this, though, Jackson, is that I can't shake the demonic feeling of it, because these things are taking children against their will, basically, and doing nefarious things. They're taking like samples, and some of them have sexual things done, and it's just like that is just absolutely the opposite of Elohim. So it's got to be some kind of evil thing, I would think, right?
One of the things they said on Among Us is that you can't attribute what one does to all of them. Now, obviously, there are a lot of different types of these things that have been seen, a lot of different types. And of course, there were other things I know done to me I just don't want to talk about. It's hard enough to talk about your nipples as it is.
Sure, no,
but
I understand.
In the thing that really grabs me now is the nipple thing. Because these cysts, they came up, my brother and I, about the same time, and they were big and they hurt like the dickens. And all we could do, at least I could do, was get them out because I couldn't live with it. It was so painful. And no,
how did your brother live with them?
I don't know. I don't know. I asked my mother. My mother recently died. Almost before she died, I asked her about that and him. And she told me that, no, he never had that surgery. So I don't know. I could ask him, but we'll see what he's very tight-lipped. So I don't know whether he'd tell me or not of something that intimate. He thinks that whatever he's going to say, I'm going to turn around and tell you on this program. I probably will. He's right. I probably would. I want to share this kind of thing, any kind of knowledge, whether it's contrived or not, because I believe that it's going to help somebody. And if nothing else, on this kind of information, look, if that gets on YouTube and over the course of the next few years, hundreds of people listen to this, there's going to be some there that have had similar experiences. And these people like me, in my early life, I thought, like, if I hadn't read about it in some of these magazines that I purchased as a young man, I wouldn't have had any idea what was going on. But then again, I have thought many times, did the magazines, like UFO magazines, put this in my mind? I don't think so.
I've heard of, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Brother Jackson, this is Greg Droogsma.
Hiya, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'd like to make a little comment about what I've been kind of picking up along the way here.
Yeah, please do.
In your first stream, people were talking about this kind of like shadow figure. And there's a character, or, when you get into when Moshe is building the temple, or the Mishkan out in the wilderness, Bezalel comes along, and he's the builder of a lot of the...
Right.
And when you break that name down in Hebrew, it means in the shadow, or in the shadow of Elohim is what that is. And a lot of people, they have a lot of different teachings about who he was, whether he was a man or whether he was someone sent by Elohim to help Moses build everything for the Mishkan. But I think in your instance, this is kind of what I'm just picking up is if you have someone that's coming along in the shadow, he's going to be not for a builder, but for someone who wants to tear down. And I think maybe it was like early in your life, I think someone was trying to tear down what Yahweh wanted to do through you in your ministry. And I think somehow you prevailed. You came through it. He came, he rescued you. He brought you through a lot of hard places. And I know that a lot of times I don't understand some of the things that happened to me either, but we just keep walking. That's just one thing I know is just to keep walking.
That's right.
And because, a lot of things happen to us in our life. And sometimes you don't know what to do. And the best thing is, what I've always thought is just don't do anything sometimes. Just keep doing what you know is the right thing to do and just keep walking. Yeah. And I just think Yahweh has prevailed for you. He went alongside of you the whole way. So, and I think with you doing what you did with the pipe is kind of your way of, it's kind of like you're not gonna take control of me. So
yeah, that stick that the guy had in his hand, I can see it now clearly. I can't say it was a flashlight because there was a globe on the end of it. It might have been useful for anything, steal your soul for that matter. But yeah, I never thought of it that way because I'm trying to keep that part of our world separate from the spiritual part. I think, of course, that if there were aliens or people from other dimensions, they're just going to be as vulnerable to the spiritual forces of the universe as we are, and just as accountable. Don't you think, Greg?
I do.
They are, like some people say, well, those are all demonic, they're devils in disguise, or the Watchers. Maybe they are. I really doubt that, but maybe they are. I don't see why would a Watcher need to have a spacecraft, for instance?
Yeah, because they would be sent to Earth, to help man here. I think that's kind of, you get into that Genesis 6, it's translated the sons of God. And Paul talks in Romans 8, he says, the whole world moans and groans for the revealing of the sons of God. And so whatever we lost in the first Adam, we're going to gain back through the second Adam, through Yahshua. And I guess the Elohim or the Watchers, who are these Watchers? I've often wondered about that. We talk about the Godhead, and a lot of times we have this picture of what we get out of Christian theology. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but I think it's way more than that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, who knows, like Moses, Elijah, David, they could all be part of, like part, not God, not Elohim, but like them, were made in his image. So
I agree with you completely on that. That just brings me back to what I had considered before. And if you look in the book of Enoch at the animal apocalypse, you really get that idea that there are certain people down through time that are anointed or recreated in such a way as to do the bidding of Yahweh in order to bring us where we are today. It's amazing that the secular world hasn't already blown the light out on Christianity. I could see that happening, but they can't blow the light out on the Creator.
Yeah.
Well,
That's a really good way to put that.
it sure is. Thank you, Greg. That was good. That helped me a lot.
Well, good. You've been a lot of help to me, brother. So,
well, hallelujah. I'm really glad to hear that this is helpful to somebody. Look, we got so much ridicule when we first got this started and all that. Even I began to feel like a cult leader.
yeah, and you wonder why people are so close-minded to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, even my brother, he said that I was the leader of a dangerous cult. My own brother said that. He's a Christian minister.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's dangerous about this cult is the fact that it's not a cult. It is simply people trying the best way they can after all these years to follow the rules of their creator.
Yeah, and that's what a cult is. A bunch of people who follow one man. And we follow one Elohim. So
that's right.
It's a culture. Cult is just the base of culture.
You notice how Christians have churchmen down through the ages have turned the meaning of cult to be something that it was never meant to be.
Yes, very nefarious.
Anything that they don't like becomes a cult. Excuse me for my stumbling tonight. I have not felt very good today, obviously, but I'm feeling better now. Last week I was not feeling good, and when I heard that testimony from Julia, I was excited afterwards. And I'm sure it'll be the same thing here. And thank you, Julia, again.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What you got for us?
Well, I just kind of was sitting back listening to everything. And first of all, I owe you an apology. So I'm really new to this Zoom thing, and I'm on my laptop. And so last week when I started taking over the whole thing, the last I had seen you had an alien face. And so I had minimized the little app on my computer. And so at the end, when I said your face looked funny, it dawned on me that you didn't have that little alien filter on your face. So I've been feeling really bad all week for saying that. So I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but anyway.
I think so. I think I do. It was just meant to be humorous.
I didn't mean to say that you looked funny. I was referring to the alien filter you had on. So thank you for sharing your story. I can just feel that it was very hard for you to go back there. It's kind of like, I feel like maybe it's been weighing on you like your whole life, and you finally have a group of people that you kind of feel safe sharing it with. So, my thoughts on all of this kind of echo Sean's. Any entity or being that stirs up fear within a human being that, we are all created in his image. So there's just an instinctive knowing that what we're dealing with in whatever capacity it is, it's not of our creator's intention. And so there's just this instinctive fear. Now, this is kind of a funny story for you. When I was a little girl, I was insanely scared of ET.
Oh.
So when I was little bitty, I don't know, I may have been like, I don't know, 4 or 5 when that movie came out. I'm actually the same age as Drew Barrymore. So I was her age when that movie came out, and she was a little girl back then. But I remember going to that movie in the theater and just seeing him, just paralyzing fear. And any time when I was a kid and I would see a poster, my mom got me and my brother some posters, and I made her put my poster in the back of my closet so I couldn't see it. I was so scared of him. And after, hearing your story, and I've looked into a lot of these things as well, and I've seen a lot of the documentaries about how they, they mess with kids. They take people. A lot of times they're doing these anatomical, anatomy type of research. And I listened to Rob Skiba for a while. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with him. A lot of the things he talked about was interesting to me. I kind of feel like, I believe these things are, I think a lot of times we tend to say something's either spiritual or it's physical. What my understanding is that these beings can manifest in a physical way. I know when I was in junior high, I had a stepdad who was very abusive, and he was the kind of person who would hold a Bible in one hand and a beer in the other. And he knew enough about spiritual things that he was basically allowing a lot of demonic activity in our home. And I remember a lot of, I guess they refer to this stuff as poltergeist type of activities. And I've seen the shadow man, and I've experienced a lot of those things. And I'm kind of like you. Sometimes things are so over the top that you question if it was actually, you just dreaming it. Did it really happen? But my brother also experienced something, and what he experienced was that he had just gone to bed. He was not asleep at all. And he could hear the rest of us in the rest of the house. And he felt this, he felt somebody and heard somebody walk in the room and then sit down on the side of his bed. And he said it was so heavy, the whole side of his bed just like, squished down. Mm-hmm. And he thought it was one of us. And when he, leaned over to see who it was, there was nothing there. He just got really, he was very fearful. So I just kind of want to touch on the fact that I think these things are inherently an abomination. Whatever they come from, who knows? Who knows? Right. But they definitely can manifest in a physical way. I think that they're territorial. I think that they're tied to certain locations. I don't understand the logistics of it all, but, you said you kept looking at the baseball field. I think that probably that was kind of their territory. Anyways, those are just kind of some of my thoughts on that. Yeah, I saw that Rob Skiba passed away. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for, sharing your story and what the other brother said as far as, I went through a lot growing up, and I suffered so much abuse and went through a lot of trauma, spiritual and things of that sort. And when he said that about, the fact that these things will come after you to try to, destroy you, confuse you, get a hold of you, sink their talons into you at a young age. But, God has other plans. So I'm just really thankful to hear your story. And sorry, last week I kind of took over everything. I promise I won't do that now. So I'm going to shut up, and I'm enjoying listening to everybody.
Well, we'd like you to take over. And you can do it anytime, because some of us are a little shy about speaking. Public speaking, of course, is one of the greatest fears of humankind. I want to mention something that I have said before. You probably heard it, and that is astrophysicist Carl Sagan, OBM, of blessed memory. In his book Cosmos, if you still have that book laying around, you might look, as he's talking about, or he's trying to explain the fourth dimension, how that would look to us. He began writing, well, maybe one paragraph about fourth dimensional beings. That is, beings that are not confined to height, breadth, and width. Beings that are able to see more of the light spectrum than we are. And we have very little bit of power to see what's going on. In fact, Oswald Chambers once said that if we could see what's going on around us, we would all be insane. And I tend to believe that. But anyway, Sagan said that if a fourth dimensional creature existed, it could materialize at any time. It could walk through walls. And he ended up by saying it could tear you apart from the inside to the outside. And so obviously, in the context of this, Sagan, in a way, he put his imprimatur on the reality of fourth dimensional creatures. And certainly a lot more people have seen the manifestation of some spiritual and usually evil being before their eyes, that they just decided not to believe their eyes. I have on several occasions. Maybe we talk about that a little bit next time. But right now it's time to go. Our time's up. And I promised myself I would keep these on time. So let's continue on.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jackson.
Well, thank you very much. You're on next week, Vicki.
I have no experiences.
Okay. Yes, I would like to hear about people that have experienced, well, as Sagan said, these fourth dimensional beings that just come and go. I have a lot of stories about that, having been in deliverance ministry for several years. But also, I ask people about things like this, and once in a while they will tell. And some good stories about that. Thank you for the prayer. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah, Steve, I think you told me about that. A little guy wearing a tuxedo and a top hat. They have a name for those too. Maybe I can find it by next week. Okay, my friend.
I might be able to help you with that because I listened to a podcast about that.
Yeah.
The guy with the top hat.
I think that there is something in, if I remember right, the Matrix movie that kind of portrays that too.
I think it was also in that couple that did The Conjuring. I think they had some experience with something of that nature also.
I'll tell you, if you're conjuring the devil will come.
Yeah, that's some creepy stuff there, but I think that they did run into something with the top hat, some kind of entity.
Will you look that up, will you?
I sure will.
Okay, see you all next week. Yahweh be with you.
Babylon is falling, and Yahushua is calling us to come out from her ways. This mystery religion is stealing Yahuwah's children. That's why he's calling, come out today. So don't drink from the wine of fornication. The harlot is pouring for you. For every tongue and every nation has drunken from the wine of her fruit. The prizes, they're deadly disguises, mere counterfeits of Yahuwah's perfect plan. The church gives no rebuttal, 'cause she is so subtle, she can lure the strongest man. So don't drink